Hello friends, I'm Dr. Satyapal, Associate Professor of English, Government National College, Sirsa. In this lecture, we shall study John Milton's poem On His Blindness. We shall look into the biographical details of the poet John Milton. After that, we shall move on to the text and we'll study the text in detail with critical comments on it. And then we shall discuss the theme of the poem. So let's move and look into the biography of the poet John Milton. This is John Milton. John Milton was a famous 17th century poet. He was born in 1608 and belonged to a family which liked music, literature, and other classical things. John Milton, at very early age, at the age of 17, decided to be a poet, and he fed on classical literature, read great works of literature in his early life, and because of this study of great literature at an early age, he could write works like Arcades, Camus, and Lycidas. And unfortunately, at the age of 44, John Milton became blind, completely blind. It is said that it was due to the overwork, it was due to more and more stress on his eyes that he became totally blind. 44 is not a mature age. At this age, he became blind, but he didn't accept defeat. After becoming blind, he wrote great epics like Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained. Each epic consists of 12 books, and Milton could write it even after his blindness. Not only these great epics, he also contributed a lot through his sonnets. The present poem On His Blindness, which we are to study today, this is also a sonnet. So his contribution to sonnets is great. He revived the classical, or you can say the Petrarchan sonnet. How he contributed, how Milton broadened the scope of sonnet. Actually, Elizabethan sonneteers, they used to write sonnets of love. Milton didn't use sonnet to express his love for some damsel. Rather, he broadened its scope by including religious and political poetry. He wrote religious poetry, he wrote poetry on politics through these sonnets, and thus widened the scope of sonnet. So, On His Blindness is a poem of 14 lines, a sonnet which was written after Milton became blind. And in this poem, he records his sense of despondency at the loss of his eyesight. He regrets how it will not be possible for him to write poetry after this blindness. So let's see the text and read the text. Let's read it aloud first. When I consider how my light is spent, or half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lost with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. As I told you earlier, in these lines, Milton thinks about his lost eyesight. Notice the tone, notice his mood, what he says and how he says. When I consider, actually this poem is a lyric, and usually lyrics are not personal poems. This is also something different. Milton brings his personal element in a lyric and uses the personal pronoun I. When I consider how my light is spent. Look at the word spent, how he has used it. We usually use this word for spending time or for spending money. He has used this word for spending his eyesight. He believes that he has used his eyesight more than desired. He doesn't blame God for it. Rather, in a very gentle and accepting tone, he says, my light is spent. My light is spent. When I consider how my light is spent, he is sad to think that he has become blind. Are half my days in this dark world and wide, before half of my days, half of my life. See the word my days. He loves his life a lot. And this belongingness to his life, belongingness to the days, has been represented through this word my, possessive pronoun. My days in this dark world and wide. After becoming blind, for Milton, the world is dark. And see how he has used the word wide, alliterative, world and wide. This world, this world is very wide. This world is dark, literally dark for a blind man who has become blind, who has lost eyesight. And that one talent which is death to hide, lost with me useless. Now he has regret that God gave him a talent. God gives talent to everyone, to me, to you, to everybody. Just like that, God gave a talent to Milton, and that talent was of writing poetry. Milton regrets that that talent of writing poetry has become useless and it is lost, it is banked with the poet now, though the poet cannot use it now because he has no eyesight. Without eyesight, he cannot write poetry, and thus the talent is being wasted now. He says that talent is useless now, though my soul more bent. Rather than using the word mind, he again uses a personal pronoun my and says, my soul more bent to serve there with my maker, alliterative with capital M. Maker has been used for God. My God who made me. My soul is ready to serve my maker, to serve the Almighty. But I have lost my eyesight, and the service which I was supposed to do was by writing religious poetry. The talent of writing poetry is with me, but oh, alas, I cannot write that poetry because I don't have any eyesight with me. I want to serve my Maker and present my true account, as if something has been borrowed and one is ready to pay back. Right from the beginning of this stanza, one thing is lurking in my mind, in the backyard of my mind, that the words like spent, the words like lost, the words like account, there is something like money, something very precious, eyesight, something very precious, and that has been spent like money, that is lost, that is banked useless now, like the notes after demonetization. And now he says, I want to present my true account to God, and I have a fear lest he returning child, capital H, because this pronoun has been used for God. He says, I want to give a true account to my God. My soul is bent for doing this, but I don't have my eyesight with me. I have a fear that when I go back to heaven, God will chide me. See how he has used the word chide. Chide is very gentle kind of rebuke. It is not harsh rebuke. Now he has firm faith in God. That is why he didn't blame God for it in the first line. Rather, he used the word spent. Now he is using the word chide. He says that God will chide me gently. He will rebuke me gently. Oh, Milton, I gave you a talent and you didn't use it. Now, inverted comma begins. Doth God exact day labor, light day night? I fondly ask. He's not very serious. He says that I'm not upset. I simply, I fondly ask. I ask simply without any grudge, without any complaint. That, that if light has been denied to me, even then will God ask me for daily labor despite me being blind? Now he's considering himself a slave. Notice the use of the word day labor, as if he's a laborer, as if he's a servant. To serve there with my maker. See the use of the word serve. How he is humbling himself. How he's he's at the feet of the Almighty. And he says, I consider, when I think about my lost eyesight, I become sad that now it will not be possible for me to write poetry and present my true account. Now this question, these are the first 8 lines of this sonnet. I cannot say 8. If you look at the bottom of this screen, then you will find that this is a half line. I fondly ask. I fondly ask. 7.5. These are 7.5 lines. And in these 7.5 lines, the poet has presented a problem, an issue. A problem he has presented. Now when we move towards the second half of line number 7 or line number 8, but patience to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke? They serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. A drastic change has come with these lines, with this sestet, a sonnet where first 8 lines are called octave and the last 6 lines are called sestet. In this sestet, Milton expresses his feelings of resignation. But patience, personified with capital P, he says, I have a question. My soul asks a question, and that question is replied. That question is responded by patience. My patience. If I have patience, patience pays. Patience is so great. And Milton says, but patience to prevent that murmur. I have a murmur inside me, a conflict inside me. And my patience replies, soon replies, inverted comma begins. What is the reply? Reply is, God doth not need. Doth not means does not. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke? God is great. God is omnipresent and omnipotent. God does not need man's work. nor does he need his gifts. He does not demand his gifts back. Who best bear his mild yoke? Yoke is symbolic here, metaphorical, means responsibility. Who best bear his mild yoke? Those who run the responsibilities, gentle, mild, small responsibilities given by God. They serve him best, even they are the best of God's servants. His state is kingly. Notice one thing which comes to my mind time and again. While in the octave it was my, me, I, and now that I, me, my has been replaced with he, his, him. It was Milton talking like मैं, and now it is God, बस तू ही तू, खुदा अल्लाह, भगवान ईश्वर गॉड, सब कुछ तू ही तू है. And how he receives the answer from his patients. Who best bear his mild yoke? They serve him best. His state is kingly. God is not a beggar. God is not a frustrated and you can say cheap kind of lover who demands his gifts back from his beloved. I'm reminded of one Punjabi song. Actually, recording these lectures during Corona is a very painful thing, unlike teaching in a live classroom. In a Punjabi song, there is one line in a Gidda, ਸਾਰੇ ਤਾਂ ਗਹਿਣੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਮਾਪਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਪਾਏ, ਇੱਕੋ ਤਬੀਤ ਉਹਦੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਦੋਂ ਲੜਦਾ ਤੇ ਲਾਦੇ ਕਰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ. God is not like that lover, zilted lover, who will demand one gift that he gave one day, he will demand back that I gave you a gift and you give it back to me. No. God is like a king, and there are thousands of angels at his bidding speed. Bidding speed means gesture. At one gesture, thousands of angels, they will start working on land and ocean, and they will not take rest. Such is the state of the king. And such a king, will he demand his gifts back from Milton? No. He will not. And the peaceful line, very quoted and very famous line, they also serve who only stand and wait. And his patience replies, and the final conclusion is reached. Milton receives answer from his patience from God, that they who only stand and wait for their turn to serve God are his best servants. So in this second part, Milton expresses his feeling of resignation, and he has faith in the justice of God. He believes that those who believe in total submission to the will of God, they are his best servants. God does not need anybody's gift or praise or work. He is like a king. The very desire to serve him is enough service. Thus the poem presents a journey from anxiety to peace. The poet begins in trouble, as we have seen in the last slide, and now he ends in tranquility, in a space of 14 lines only. And this journey has been very interesting at many levels. So let's move forward and see what is the theme in this poem, and what is the central issue in Milton's mind. John Milton was a religious-minded person, and he had complete faith in God. In Milton's time, people questioned God's attitude towards man. but he had firm faith in God's mercy. And some critics accused him after his portrayal of Satan in Paradise Lost, and said that he belonged to Satan's party. Actually, Milton was a true servant of God. This poem shows how he has firm faith in the fairness of God. He believes God cannot do injustice to anyone. He tells us how he was frustrated after loss of his eyesight, and how he had apprehensions about his return to God, and his rebuking that he did not use the talent given to him in a proper way. The Almighty gifted him the talent of writing poetry, but the same becomes useless because of loss of his eyesight. But Milton asserts that the loss is almost death for him, as his talent cannot be used in absence of eyesight. Hiding this poetic talent is just like death for him. He says that he has always been very keen in making full use of his poetic talent. He wanted to give a fair and true account of his hard work to God. However, it is not possible because of his blindness. He is particularly pained to reflect about his blindness. Despite his readiness and eagerness to write poetry, to serve God, he is not able to do it. And this fills him with a bitter mood. He thinks of God and he fears lest he returning chide him. He becomes very nervous. His sense of helplessness can be seen in the use of his phrase in the first part of the poem, dark and wide world. This signifies the severe feeling of helplessness. Again, his faith in God and belonging to God that gets revealed in his use of terms like my maker. Oh God, I belong to you. You are mine, I'm yours. He seems to highlight. In helpless anguish and disturbed state of mind, Milton asks a question. That question gets a reply from his patience, and he gets consoled that neither does God need man's work or return of God's gifts. God never demands return of his gifts. He is a great master and man is his servant. Those who bear with his will humbly, they are his best servants. There are thousands of angels at the service of God. They carry out his commands on land and ocean. So they also serve God, who only stand and wait for their turn. Thus the poet moves from a very bad, bitter and despondent, frustrated mood to a very tranquil, peaceful and happy mood towards the end of the poem. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching this video. Subscribe my channel and keep enjoying literature.